Here's a question most of us bring to faith at some point, whether we say it out loud or not. How do I find God? We imagine a spiritual life that starts with us. We reach, we seek, we look up, and there, at the end of our effort, God is waiting. The search ends when we finally find the searcher. John Wesley thought the beginning was earlier than that, a lot earlier. He called it prevenient grace. Prevenient from the Latin prevenire, meaning coming before. Grace that is already in motion before we take a single step toward God. The seeking we think we're doing, according to Wesley, that's already a response to grace that was already at work. This week, we're going to sit with that idea from 5 different angles. And I think it's going to change how you read your own story. Prevenient grace is the Wesleyan way of saying, God does not wait. God doesn't wait for us to clean up. God doesn't wait for us to figure out the right questions. God doesn't wait for us to be close enough to deserve it. God offers us grace that's already there, before any of that, already present, already active, already reaching. And why does that matter? Because it changes the entire shape of a spiritual life. If grace is already ahead of me, then I'm not generating something new when I turn toward God. Instead, I'm recognizing something that was already there. That is a genuinely different posture. And it turns out, it changes a lot. The clearest place Scripture gives us to see this is the prophet Jeremiah. God speaks to him at the beginning of his call, and this is what God says. Before I formed you in the womb, I knew you. And before you were born, I consecrated you. I appointed you a prophet to the nations. Before the womb, before the name, before the resume, before Jeremiah had a single credential, a single question, a single thing to offer, God knew him. That's the beginning of the story. And what I want you to notice is that Jeremiah's first response, it's not gratitude, it's argument. He doesn't know how to speak. He's too young. He has reasons why this doesn't make sense. And God's answer is essentially, I know all of that. I've known it longer than you've been alive, and it doesn't change what I said. This is what prevenient grace feels like from the inside. God's knowing of us is not contingent on what we know about ourselves or what we do next. It precedes us, which means, and this is worth sitting with, our spiritual biographies didn't start when we first walked into a church or said a prayer or finally admitted we needed help. We stepped into something that was already in progress. The years before that moment, they weren't empty. Grace was already at work in what we didn't understand, in what we rejected, in what we were pretty sure had nothing to do with God. Paul makes the same claim from the angle of cost rather than calling. But God proves his love for us in that while we were still sinners, Christ died for us. While we were still sinners. Not after we turned around, not once we showed good faith, not when we were partway there. While. Grace moved first. Grace moved toward us in the condition it found us in, without waiting for the condition to improve. And if that's true, and I think it is, then the people who seem farthest from faith are not outside grace's reach. They're already inside it. They just don't know it yet. Neither did we, once. John's gospel goes all the way to the cosmic level on this. In the beginning was the Word. The grace doesn't start with you. It starts at the beginning of everything. There is no moment in history and no moment in any of our histories that was before the grace. It was already there. Now, here's some things that this actually rearranges. First, we stop treating the spiritual life as something we generate. The question shifts from, how do I find God, to where has God already been before I thought to look? That's a gentler and I think more accurate question. Second, we stop writing people off. If prevenient grace is operating before anyone turns toward it, then there is no such thing as a person who is beyond its reach. The posture of welcome, like the father in the parable of the prodigal son, already watching the road before his son came into view. That posture is already in place for everyone. And third, and this one I find genuinely moving, it means the version of grace that waits for us to become worthy of it is not the grace we actually have. Instead, it's the grace that has moved toward us first, which means the version of faith that is mostly performing for a watching God is built on a misreading. The God who is watching is already for us, was already for us. That's not a doctrine to embroider on a pillow. It's a claim that changes the whole story, backward and forward. This week, the study opens with that question from 5 different angles. Jeremiah before the womb, Paul's Romans 5, the Ephesians passage about being chosen before the foundation of the world, Paul in Athens telling a crowd that the God they're searching for is the one they're already living inside, and John's prologue pushing the grace all the way back to in the beginning. The invitation is simple. Look back at your own life with different eyes, not with regret, not trying to reconstruct it perfectly, just what was happening in the years you didn't call it grace, because it may have been grace anyway. The study guide will walk you through each day. I look forward to seeing you at the end of the week.